you were at Basel as well, I think, right?
I was, yeah.
I wasn't able to go this year, but Prof was there, so you guys are both in your post Basel era
recovering.
Yeah, everyone's either got COVID, the flu, or if they managed to cut through, just general depression because you're not going to see your online friends for another 6 months.
Oh no!
So I'm sliding into that last one.
Which of these are people talking about when they're talking about the Basel flu? Are they talking about COVID or depression or which of these?
I think it's more
of the three.
Yeah,
a terrible cocktail.
A little Art Basel COVID cocktail.
Welcome back to Zero Rights Reserved, a CC0 podcast about nouns, DAOs, Ethereum, NFTs, and more, brought to you by the Noun Square Onchain Media Collective. I'm your host, Toady Hawk. My co-host today is Prof Witter, aka the Nounish Professor. And our guest this week is the indomitable Deana Burke, co-founder of perhaps the coolest club in crypto, Boys Club. Welcome to ZEROPOD, Deana.
Thank you so much for having me. That's a very generous introduction.
I thought
we should have done an introduction like your introduction, just been like Boys Club. Wait, Boys Club, the Boys Club podcast.
Wait, zero rights reserved, like some rights reserved, or a couple?
No, zero rights reserved. I think we need to change.
If we were clever, that's what we would have done. Maybe we'll do it in post. We'll fix it in post.
Nice.
Well, the great thing about having a podcast host as your guest is that it means I actually get to take the day off. So you guys have fun, and Deana's going to take it from here. Nouns are all about people, places, and things. So we say that often on this podcast. We like to start with the people and just really hear the story of the people behind the projects and communities that we care about in this space. So I would really love to hear a little bit about your personal journey and sort of how you ended up in this space, if you would share.
Sure. So it's always funny to figure out where to start the story when people ask you what got you here.
I was born on a cold night. No.
I have a marketing background, so sort of grew up in my career in agencies and then marketing agencies, and then started a marketing agency myself, and then that was acquired by something called Indiegogo. I don't know if you guys remember the good old days of crowdfunding. Indiegogo was sort of like the alternative to Kickstarter. So
right.
I was working there, sort of like in-house agency. This was 2017-ish, and I came across crypto then, really sort of by being in the office, and a bunch of the honestly dudes who were in that office were really into it. And I was like, hey, what's going on here? It seems like they're making a lot of money somehow, and I'm interested in making some money. And
to be fair, they were only telling you about the successes. They were
totally 100%.
Like, and definitely pump this bag. This is not my bag. Sure,
totally.
That's okay, just pump.
Totally. You guys get it. So anyway, I started kind of embarrassingly by trading shitcoins. Like that was like my first introduction to crypto. I
started with trading shitcoins with pictures on them. So it's really
nice. In like weird Telegram, like pump and dump chat. Like I was just like in a dark corner when I was first getting started, and I didn't know anything about it, and I had no idea what I was doing, and lost money. It was just basically gambling and losing money. But that was kind of my way in, and then started learning about the technology behind it, blockchain technology, and just fell down the rabbit hole as you do, and I got really excited about what I felt like the technology could do for the communities and people that I was interested in being in service of, and felt like, man, there was a real opportunity to level the playing field of, at first, finance. That's all I was kind of thinking about. I didn't grow up with money, and when you don't grow up with money and then you go, you're like in crowds with people with money, you're like, oh wow, your perspective on money is totally different than my perspective on money. My perspective on money is like, how am I going to just like keep this little pile? And for people who have money, they're like, how am I going to make this money work for me? And so when I sort of like realized that, I was like, man, the cards are stacked against folks who don't come up with wealth and don't come from that place of privilege. So anyway, I was just really excited about what I felt like was a leveler in crypto. and that it meant that people who have sort of been left behind by the traditional financial system could participate in a way that was meaningful. So that was 2017. In 2018, I left my job and I raised a little bit of money and built what was effectively a Bitcoin wallet that was designed very intentionally for teenage girls. So I was like, I'm really interested in this space. I really want to get women, particularly young women, involved. And there's no place that felt like I could point my niece to be like, go and have your first sort of experience with crypto here. And so I built that. It was very social. It was it had like a social feed, a very colorful, kind of like a safe, well lit space for people to have their first crypto experience. And again, primarily young women. I did that for 2 years in the bear market. It's funny
how it's kind of like the polar opposite of how you were onboarded to crypto. It's like you saw the terrible corner that you entered in. You're like, there's got to be a better way than this.
There's got to be a better way for this.
Exactly. I was like, I want to
dark alley. Let's create this light.
Totally. I did. If you guys were in crypto in 2018, 2019, it was just terrible. So I was doing that. I was trying to make that app work for those 2 years in that bear market and couldn't find any meaningful traction, couldn't raise my second round of funding. And it was just like bear market doldrums. And so I had to wind that down, which was really painful at the time, but it was absolutely essential for me to get to the place where I was starting Boys Club. So then fast forward to 2021, I had done a couple other startups on the side with my partner, Natasha, Toady, who you met. And, in our relationship between me and Natasha, I was always like, getting into crypto. Like, and she was always like, I love that for you, but it's not my bag. It's not my thing. Like, she's kind of an art girl, a fashion girl. And so in 2021, everything changed, as you guys know, and crypto, Web3, as we're then started to call it, started to seep into culture in interesting ways. So it started to come through into sports with Top Shot. It started to come through in social clubs with Friends with Benefits. And all of a sudden, she was like, okay, wait, it's kind of entering my world in a way that previously it had just been like a black box of technology and finance that I'm not interested in at all. And so that was kind of when Boys Club was born, was in that moment where I was able to finally convince her, like, hey, there's something here. And in that convincing, in our relationship, we were like, man, we want to have that conversation with a lot more, at first, just women in our lives. That's kind of the scope that we were originally imagining Boys Club would be. And then that expanded considerably. But that's kind of been the journey so far. Been in it for long enough that I should have more money. But we're here now.
That is the most relatable thing ever. I've been in it long enough. Why am I still poor? What's going on?
Yeah, we feel that. but our wallets are really pretty.
Yeah.
So when I was talking to Prof last night and preparing a little bit for this interview, one thing that she brought up is how when you and Natasha interviewed me about the Nouns fork, I guess 4 months ago or so, and I was really happy to be on your podcast. It was a lot of fun. But one thing you said that stuck out for Prof was you said, Nouns is something I feel like I should know more about, but now I feel like it's too late to ask. And we kind of joked about how it was like that meme, like, it's too late to ask. And that's kind of how we feel a little bit about Boys Club, even though we've both been avid listeners to the podcast.
Especially
and whatnot.
Me.
It's like sometimes
I should know all about this. And like when I first found your podcast, I'm like, how did it take me this long? And why aren't I a member of this? And I'm still learning. I'm still learning.
I love it. I mean, I think in fairness, like Boys Club is constantly evolving and changing. And so wherever you meet us on our journey is perfect. You're welcome anytime. And we're also so different than we were when we started 2 years ago. So I'd say that's totally fair and fine.
Well, so can we start there then?
Yeah. I was going to say, can you talk a little bit about that journey, like where you started and sort of where it's evolved and kind of...
Yeah.
Maybe start with the name, because I know a lot of people are going to be listening and they'll be like, Boys Club, It doesn't seem
that
accurate.
was my first thought. Boys Club. I was like, I don't know. Is it for me? Is it not for me? I'm not sure. Is it tongue in cheek or am I in the wrong place? I'm not sure.
Yes, it is for you. Boys Club. The name is tongue in cheek. We have one of our sort of core values or pillars is sort of a subversive humor, and having the name be Boys Club really delivers on that front very effectively, and also kind of just a nod to boys clubs of yore, and kind of
the whole entire
striking
crypto
out
space,
and creating
is that
our
what you
own.
mean? Yeah, just
What's that?
the whole entire crypto space. You mean?
Yes. So we just wanted to carve out our own space.
Even the structures that we're trying to disrupt,
Exactly.
When I hear Boys Club, that's what I think of as like the cigar rooms of yore,
Totally. I think also, there's kind of a anti-authoritarian streak that runs throughout the community, the expression of the brand. And so, that's kind of more than it is about individual people. I'd say it's just about sort of the structures that we're kind of nodding to with the name. But basically we started 2 years ago, the last sort of height of the bull run, as I mentioned in that moment with Natasha, where I was like, okay, finally able to show her what was happening here. And we were like, man, we're in, aside from like even the money or the speculation, it became really apparent that we were and are in a really incredible design moment for what the new consumer internet is going to look like, and that we're all going to be living in like 3 to 5 years. And it's like, man, we have an opportunity right now to shape it and to be involved in it and to sort of speak into what it becomes, but only if we have a seat at the table, right? And if we are like learning about it, and if we're understanding it, and if we're building things in and around it. And so that's what was really exciting to Natasha and I, more even than like investing or anything like that. We actually in Boys Club don't ever really talk about investing at all, where there's no like charts channels or anything like that. It's more just like, man, there's a lot of creativity here. There's a whole new paradigm shift that's happening around an internet that's ownable. And
same here. So Prof Werder is a lawyer, and she's always complaining she never gets to say NFA on our podcast.
Our standard disclaimer: not legal advice, not financial advice, probably not a cult. Moving on.
I love that. Anyway, so we were just like, let's just get some people in a room together to learn together. And so we did our first event, and then that was like totally oversubscribed. And then we did another event that was bigger. And then we just kind of kept doing bigger and bigger IRL events, like very much getting together in an actual physical room at first New York. And I think kind of the vibe of those early days was like, none of us are experts. We all are just interested in what this technology is going to do and mean for our careers and the things that we're interested in, like art and fashion and all these things. Like we just want to learn together and learn in community. And the only way that we knew how to do that was like, let's just get in a room together and kind of talk about it and bring in some experts that might serve to inspire the people who are in the audience. And so that's how we started. And then we were just like doing events and honestly just self-funding them. We were just like buy a lot of falafels and get in a space in Chinatown and talk about Web3. And then I'd say a couple months into doing that, there was sort of a gravitational pull around the brand, and it felt really natural to try experimenting with a DAO. And so we spun up the DAO a couple months in, really just because it was like a lot of people were like, I want to get involved with Boys Club, and I don't know how, and I don't know what. And we're like, okay, well, I don't know either, but there seems to be this container that's a DAO that other people are using, so maybe we can try and experiment with that as well. And so that's kind of when the first season of the DAO was born. It was basically just like, okay, I think this is something that people are doing. Let's try it ourselves. And I'd say the first couple months of that was a lot of figuring out like what that means and what it is. And then we were kind of playing around with DAO stuff. And then in that, we dropped our first NFT. But again, like it's all been in the spirit of experimentation. It was like, we want to all learn together what it means to create and launch an NFT collection. Like again, in that learning in community, more than it was like, let's make a ton of money for the treasury. That ended up being a side effect, but that wasn't really sort of what our intention was at first. We were like, man, we just want to kind of figure this out. We had some engineers, we had some marketers, and it was like, let's just kind of do this. So that's one of the projects that we did early on. And then the media work really just evolved naturally from there, where we were like, okay, the brand has a really distinct way of showing up, and there's a voice that's emerged out of that, which is also very distinct and could like bear the weight of its own editorial channels and editorial voice. And so we started doing the newsletter every week.
It also opens you up to finding people all over the world instead of just
totally
Brooklyn, you know?
Totally. Yeah. So we started doing the media work. We started with the newsletter, and then we started doing podcasts. And again, it's just like all been, let's experiment and like kind of see what sticks. And then the whole time, Natasha and I were both also doing other jobs. So we were nights and weekends on Boys Club. And then there was a real inflection point about 6 months ago, I'd say, where we both were like, okay, I think there's enough here, especially with the media business, for us to quit our jobs and give it our best shot to do this full time. And so
congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We've been
full-time, but like
great,
that happened during the bear market too, which is even more
huge.
awesome. So
that's
how you know you're building something great.
Thank you. We've been doing that for 6 months. And then honestly, events have just been continuous throughout. Like that's just the heartbeat of the community and how we show up. And so
that's what I always hear about from your community is about your events. And I was really bummed I didn't make it over to the one you had at Art Basel. Sounded like it was incredible, but I always hear that about Boys Club, is that their events are next level and very inclusive and very just amazing and great connections being made. So how was your most recent one at Art Basel?
Well, first of all, the next one you know, definitely both of you need to try and come to. Events are great. I mean, I don't know how much experience you guys have with live events, but like they're so stressful.
I used to be a wedding and event planner. That's why I laughed.
Okay,
I just did a day-long event at Art Basel for Lil Nouns. So I feel you. It's incredibly stressful.
It's like it's what I call a stress incline. It just gets more and more stressful as you're getting up to the day. And then like in the hours before, it's like you're at the peak of stress, and then everything usually is fine. And there's a decompression, but
it's like you guys are planning a wedding like every 2 months. So
totally.
You
And
never get the break.
Yeah. And then being in the wedding too, like a big part of it is like,
and then you're the bride.
Everyone comes, and it's so
no
fun.
Honeymoon. There's never a honeymoon.
Totally. This is my honeymoon right now. Basel was great energy in Miami around Web3. I'd say generally, a lot of incredible events that we went to. And it seems like, I don't know, maybe we are so back, but it felt
might be so back.
I think we might be so...
No, I hope you're right. It feels that way.
I hope I'm right too.
So at your
at
event,
the same
you
time,
also...
though,
Oh, go ahead.
At the same time, though, I kind of I've been getting like flack for saying I kind of wish the bear market would go on a little longer. Like I've been having fun, and so maybe I'm the only one, but I don't know. It's kind of a vibe.
I know what you mean though, because there's a different vibe, like the peak where you're just people are grinding in the Discord and there's scams every second and there's people in your DMs and it's like, that's been all gone and it's been nice, and you start to see it kind of creeping back, and it's
totally.
Like, I'm not in the mood
for
that.
What I'm not looking forward to is not knowing who's here for real. You know, that's something we've talked about on previous podcasts. I remember specifically Chris Carella from Purple was on our pod, and he mentioned he specifically came back to crypto after having left when the bear market hit, because he was like, now I know the people that are here actually, you know, give a shit about what's happening and you know, onboarding the next billion users and all this stuff that we care about. But soon, in like 5 months, it's going to be really hard again to tell who cares and who's just here for the money. So maybe that's what I am a little fearful of.
I think we'll all remember who stuck around. I like to think that there's some on-chain receipts as well of who's been here.
True story. You know, that's a great point. We do have some on-chain receipts now. It's not like you can pretend. I was here the whole time. Really?
Let's pull up your scan.
Then this is my Toady plea.
chain.
Please, in 6 months, please check the receipts, because I tell you, sometimes in the bull market, no one's checking receipts. But
totally,
no, it's checking receipts.
No, that's cool. Basel looked super fun, though. I had a lot of FOMO. It was my son's first birthday this weekend, so I was partying with cake and toddlers instead of you guys. But it looked really
your
fun.
friends
It honestly
in
seemed like everybody was there. So
everybody was there except
Yeah,
Toady.
it was great.
It was phenomenal. And you all launched the next edition of your zine at the event. So can you talk about that and the and like the was this what issue was this or what volume?
Wait.
Yeah,
I think we need to stop for that. Like, what is a zine?
Oops,
there might be people listening who are like, "What's a zine? What does that mean?" Can you start there first.
A zine is just a more low-key magazine, I guess is how I define it. Sort of scrappier, more grassroots magazine, I think is how folks design it. There was a lot of zines in the 90s around some different subcultures. So that's a zine, and this is our second edition. So we did we dropped one at South by Southwest last year, and then our second edition here. And the zine or the magazine, the reason, well, first of all, it came from a DAO proposal. So a community member who is this woman, she's an incredible photographer. She was looking for a new sort of creative outlet for herself and what was really interested in the idea of producing a zine, and didn't on her own really have the vehicle to do that as just an independent photographer in New York. Sure, she could, but it's much more effective to do that with a platform. And so she brought it to Boys Club DAO and was able to, build enough sort of momentum and consensus around it and form an early team around it where it took hold. And as you guys know, not everything does take hold in a DAO. There's a lot of great ideas that come through and not all of them stick, but she stuck the landing with it. And so did the first edition last in March. And basically what the zine allows us to do, a magazine is an old media format, right? It's been around for decades, right? As a channel. But what it allows us to do is it's actually really great for communities like ours because it allows us to bring in a lot of different voices and a lot of different artists and people working across different mediums into one edition. That has its own editorial voice, but allows for a lot of different expressions of that voice, and also marks a moment in time. And that was really what we were looking for as a community. It was man, there's so many incredible people here. We know these people are going to go on to do really, really cool things. We want to kind of stamp this is what the community looked like right now. And these were the people that were doing amazing work. And we want to celebrate that and put a flag in the ground so that in 5 years we can look back and be oh, she was on the cover of the Boys Club zine in 2023 that. And look where she is now. And so,
and having something tangible too, when anytime we've been to events in Web3, I've been to NFT NYC a couple times, and when you leave, I mean, you have the experiences that you had, and you'll remember those for a bit. But all the swag and all of the interesting, tangible things that you take home are the things that you later sort of treasure about those experiences.
By the way, I have a box for you. You have to dox though. You're gonna have to dox to me, or I'm not sending it. I brought you swag
we'll
from
dox
Miami.
For box.
That's kind.
We'll dox for swag. Thank you.
Nice.
But all this stuff that gets made, this is from an artist in Korea who made this. It's our mascot for the Nouns Square, and stuff like that that's physical that you can touch is special because we're so on chain. You know what I mean? And totally. So all of our friends are all over the world, and we're interacting, sometimes face to face like this, but even more often just on Discord and on Twitter and on Farcaster. On X and on Farcaster. So yeah, it's nice to have those things you can hold in your hand sometimes.
Totally. I love how you're a Farcaster guy. Forgot that about you. Exactly. We wanted something that felt just a little bit more permanent. And so anyway, we did the first edition. We had Latasha on the cover, who's this incredible musician, artist who does a lot of work in Web3. And then we did our second edition and focused this edition more on sort of memes and different corners of the internet. And it's a break-even operation financially. It doesn't make us any money, and it's a lot of very hard and stressful work. When you're dealing in print, it's not only are the timelines longer and more I guess, harder, like firmer. They also like once you push something to print, it's like, okay, hope it's right. Like
it's
there's no
like a smart contract. You can't fix the bugs.
Totally.
Yeah, nope.
So
Totally.
There's no way to like fix it. So it's stressful working in print. It's really hard. We don't make any money from it. It's just totally a labor of love, but it is, it does feel special and different. And I think for a community of people who are across the world, around the world, like having something that, again, like marks it in time and shows them, I don't know, there's a physicality of it that is really special and fun. So we'll continue doing it, but it is, man, in the thick of it, I'm like, boy, we're never doing this again.
That's awesome.
Are
So
you releasing it as an NFT as well, perchance?
So another part of the Zine project is like, just again, this idea of experimentation. So we're wanting to, and we'll continue to experiment with what the on-chain strategy is for the Zine each time. The first one we did an open edition mint on OpenSea, and it was like, okay, let's the sort of separate the physical Zine from the minting experience and have like a big moment online where there's this open edition mint, and then sort of the physical Zine has its own life. That was the strategy.
It was the open edition meta too.
Sorry?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It was the open edition meta then also.
Yeah, exactly. And so then with this edition, one thing that we felt like, just in terms of learnings from that we felt was missing when we had the open edition mint and having that not be tied to the physical edition, is that it took away from sort of the experience of having a copy of the physical edition. It didn't really mean anything. Like, it means that you have it, but that wasn't, you having that physical edition was not reflected on change, since anyone could mint it. So it took away from kind of the scarcity and specialness of it. So with this edition, we're like, let's experiment with having it be the mint be tied to the actual physical copy. So we have 500 editions. Each one is individually numbered. And this time it's much more like a phygital experience where you actually receive the edition of the Zine, and then you can mint from there, minting on Luxo. So it was much more.
Sorry, actually, phygital is one of our banned words here on.
Excuse me. What would you like me to replace it with?
I'm just kidding. No phygital.
If you have a better word, I'm happy to use it. I just have.
I'm just joking. I just heard people joke about it being a funny word, but it is the word.
It works.
It unfortunately works. If it wasn't such a tidy word where like it actually expressed an idea really concisely, I wouldn't ever use it because it's awful, but it does. So anyway, yeah. So this one, 500 mints tied to the physical copy. Actually, an interesting learning with this drop was that not having it be an open edition took away from like the internet moment of dropping the Zine. So that's kind of the trade-off, which we wouldn't have known unless we just we learned by doing. So now we know.
I'm just going to say that is the trade-off. It's like you're trading scarcity for attention always.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we do for edition 3, but that's again just like fun to experiment and kind of learn as we ship stuff.
And then when's the third one planned for? Just out of curiosity.
Ask me in 2 weeks. I don't know.
Okay, cool.
Right now.
She's on her honeymoon, Prof. This is her honeymoon.
Never again is the answer.
So a little bit ago, you said
3.
I did. I walked into it.
A little bit ago, you mentioned a word, and I saw Prof. Werder's ears perk up. You said DAO, and Prof does a lot of work with Builder DAO, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's actually a Nouns-funded initiative that makes it super easy for anyone to spin up a DAO in a couple clicks. So Prof does a lot of work in that space, and I could just tell that Prof wanted to ask you a question or two about the DAO structure that you guys are working with. Am I right,
so
Prof?
what is your DAO structure? Are you using an ERC20 or are you using an NFT token for voting, and how are you structured?
We are actually
snapshot,
we're an off-chain DAO. So we are also in a moment of reflection as a DAO to figure out what is next for us. So we've done 2 distinct seasons as a DAO. We also, the woman who really stewards our DAO initiatives, her name is Parker. She's done some incredible sort of writing and postmortem writing and learnings on sort of the 2 different seasons that I can send you guys the link.
That would be great. Yeah.
That are really incredible. I think for us, we're in a moment of trying to figure out what we want the DAO to do. And there's some conflicting opinions about what we think the DAO's purpose should be, but it felt
many
important.
such cases, by the way.
Many such cases. Many such
not
cases.
Alone.
It felt important to have, I think what we've learned is that there's incredible energy around Boys Club. There's a lot of people who want to participate and who want to get involved, and that's incredible. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. And when you don't have a really clear way to channel that energy towards a really specific goal, it goes like, it like spreads out and goes crazy. And it actually is, it ends up being kind of a waste of everyone's time, where you're trying to like herd cats and people are all going in different directions. And it's, isn't in service of anyone. And so we wanted to, mostly just out of respect for people's time and attention, wanted to make sure that when we start up the next season of the DAO, we have a really clear mandate, really, really clear. And we're all kind of walking in the same direction. Now, people's journeys may be slightly different, and some people may be working on one thing and other people working on another thing, but like that there's a clear North Star. We've kind of been lacking that. And so that's what we're sort of in reflection of now before we start season 3. And also we are an off-chain DAO. So Boys Club, there's no token. We do have an NFT that was sort of a supporter NFT, but that's not tied to either membership or participation in the DAO. And also the DAO is a smaller subset of our community. So there's the sort of core team and the DAO, which is I think at this point probably technically like 30 people in the DAO, and then there's the wider community, and then there's kind of the audience of Boys Club. There's like these growing circles. So that's another distinction. So we're small. Like we've always decided to sort of approach the DAO experiment in like a really contained way, so that we're not experimenting too broadly and then having the impact of a failed experiment on a larger community of people. So there's a lot I can say on the DAO. It's been incredible and also incredibly challenging to get our hands around.
I think the thing about DAOs is that maybe it's a double-edged sword, but there's like a set of expectations that comes along with calling something a DAO, and part of that's just maybe the trail that's been blazed by the DAOs that have existed so far. But I mean, tokens is one of them, right? So already by saying this is a tokenless DAO, people are like, "What? Like, how could that be a DAO?" Right? I'm sure you've probably heard that. And
totally.
Actually, we've had the question a lot at the Nouns Square, like, when are you guys going to become a DAO? And we're in the process right now of launching something similar. It's called the Yellow Collective, and it's going to be an on-chain club, very much inspired by things like Boys Club and some of the other, on-chain but also off-chain groups or clubs that are not necessarily a DAO in like the traditional sense, not like Nouns DAO, not like Aave DAO, not like some of these protocol DAOs, but rather just like a club of people that are united in a common goal. In this case, to support artists in the Nouniverse. And so we're treading very carefully too, and like saying this is not a DAO, this is not a shared treasury necessarily. This is a club, with any funds that are raised will go back to the artists in the space, but it's not like one token, one vote. And making those expectations very clear up front is very difficult. So I definitely feel you on trying to navigate that particular minefield.
Yeah, I think that in many ways the protocol DAOs are a lot clearer in terms of how they work, what they're for, how voting structures can be optimized. I think when it's a social DAO, like kind of what you're describing and what Boys Club is, there's not like some protocol that's just spitting money into a shared treasury. That's not what this is. Like we and the work isn't as binary. It's not as black and white where it's like, okay, you finish this task, now you get X amount of tokens. It's more amorphous. And so I think because of that, it just needs a lot clearer vision in order for it to not just turn into chaos. And so that's kind of what we're present to. And I think similar to what you're describing in terms of supporting the artists, that's personally what I'm campaigning for with the Boys Club DAO as well, in terms of what to transition into. For us, it's a little bit different. It's like, man, we have a lot of incredible talent and in the Boys Club community, and people who are working on really cool projects. Like I'm personally like, I think Boys Club DAO should be a grant giving organization where the DAO is voting on.
We know things about that.
Okay, maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's powerful.
That's what we do.
Of course, I love that, and I think that it's kind of just like what are we good at, and what's the community have, and so anyway, that's just sort of a personal side quest that I'm on, but that's what I think.
Take a look at Energy. I'm not sure if you've seen it. They've been really active on Farcaster. Chris Corella from Purple was one of the folks who also started this up. It's a DAO to support artists on the Zora ecosystem.
Oh, cool.
And we're looking at what they're doing pretty closely in sort of setting up what we're trying to do. And it sounds like it might be also relevant for
totally
for season 3 of Boys Club. Yeah,
especially with such a creative community and artists, and really being able to bring them into it would be interesting in terms of the art. If you were going down an NFT DAO route with something that like the way Nouns works, but you can do that for free and on an L2, just saying. So, that might be a great direction, so that you can, actually showcase the talents of, the members of Boys Club would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great idea. Thank you.
So that's an option. So Parker, if you're the one, reach out, hit me up in the DMs. I'll talk you through some options. We got things.
That's
can
great.
help. And they're all free, by the way. They're public goods. So there you go. Not even shilling. It doesn't even pump any bags.
Okay, sorry, just a quick pause. My earpods have started doing this thing. I don't know if you've noticed this bug. Sometimes when you reposition my earpod, anyway, maybe this is not a known issue, it starts something playing on your computer that was up.
Yep.
And I was listening to an interview with Deana before this, prepping a little bit. And
so you're hearing it twice?
I adjusted my AirPod, and Deana started talking out of a different speaker. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Oh, man, awful.
If I looked really confused for a couple minutes, that is why. I was like, what is going on here? Apple, devs do something.
Her mouth is not saying the right words.
That was so weird. Anyway,
that's trippy.
That's really funny.
All right, I have a question here for you. So one thing I think that we have in common is that we're both trying to build kind of like a media collective thing that is not beholden to the usual constraints and limitations of traditional media. Where educational content and editorials and all these things and events, in your case, would always be in some kind of a vice grip, with advertiser influence. And so I'd love to hear your take on that, because it's something we're thinking about a lot and struggling with a lot, like a lot of content creators in this space. Can you give me your thoughts a little bit on that and how Boys Club is trying to grapple with that?
Yeah. Well, I do say we do have advertisers and sponsors. So
right. Yeah. Sure.
In many ways,
it's a mix, all right?
It is a mix. Yeah. In many ways, the business of Boys Club, kind of looks like a traditional media business, right? Like there's advertisers, there's sponsors. What we haven't done, and what I don't think we'll do, at least in the short term, and I want to just caveat, we could change our mind in 2 months and decide to do this. But what we haven't done is we haven't raised venture capital. And that's been a really intentional decision, because I think for media businesses in particular, that's more even than sponsors and advertisers in the beginning, at least. That's when there's you take on venture capital, and there's odd outcomes for media businesses where you're kind of digging yourself out of a hole and racing for growth at all costs. And I think for a little budding early stage media business trying to find its footing, trying to find its voice, trying to find its audience, that would be I don't think a very healthy pressure to put on the business, though it would give us a lot more space and breathing room to not have to be chasing sponsors and advertisers and that type of stuff. So
we feel that. So no merger with Decrypt.
Decrypt.
Not for us. Not for us. I want to like reserve the right to change our mind in the future. But for now, we're bootstrapped, and so actually, the sponsors and the advertisers in this case has actually given us a lot of. It allowed us to quit our jobs and to do this full time. So it's been a total blessing for us, and they've have us on a very long leash to do basically whatever we want, and recognize that like kind of what they're buying is a whole thing that needs its own space in order to be good. So luckily we've had incredible partners so far. But I think, I don't know. I have a thesis about sort of on-chain media that at least early stage, which we are, it's all about distribution. It's 100% about finding audience and finding distribution. That's the only way that our business can survive and have an impact in the world. And so for us, having any friction in how people access our content, that affects the distribution. And so
you're referring to like minting and whatnot to
minting,
be able to consume. Yeah,
minting or like token gating content. That's kind of the antithesis of what we're trying to do right now, which is like get it as far and wide as possible. And so
we talked about trade-offs earlier, and I think this is another such trade-off.
Totally.
It's like
it totally is. I could totally see a world where okay, we have some strong foundations as a business, as a media business, like as a result of our incredible partners that supported us early on, and now we're in a position where okay, we can start to focus on loyalty and subscribers, and that type of work plays so well into the on-chain media space and token gating content and minting episodes. But for now, it's like, man, we're so fledgling, we're so early, we're just trying to make it work like with that. And the only way that works is when we're getting new people into experiencing our content. So I don't know if that was.
I think we're in a similar. I think we're in a similar space where it's like we do want to mint our content online and on chain because we're an on-chain media collective. We want to be able to look back in 5 years and be like, here's our record of everything we've created. But that's why we like all of our podcasts are minted on Zora, but they're minted for free, because like you said, we just want people to be able to to see them, right? We don't, it's not a way of trying to become self-sufficient immediately, but it's a way of saying like, if you like this, mint it. And of course, with things like Zora, creator rewards, who knows down the line, maybe they could create income, but it's definitely not a high priority. It's more about just getting it out there and like getting people comfortable with more on-chain methods of distribution as well.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. I think if there's any, on-chain media people listening, what I would love is, instead of solving for revenue, instead of trying to solve for revenue for creators in the short term, trying to solve for distribution, novel distribution for creators. As a creator, that's what I'm looking for. I haven't really seen that in any of the Web3 tooling yet. Everyone seems to be focusing on.
What we're asking for is an on-chain Spotify. Okay, this is Deana and Toady Improv saying, please, when on-chain Spotify.
Yeah,
Zora,
it's like
Jacob, if you're listening, that's what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for. Everyone's building these things where it's like, well, you can get some incremental revenue when people mint your stuff, and it's like that's great, but like, that 0.000001 ETH isn't gonna feed my kids. Like,
for sure.
That's and I appreciate that is something that they're thinking about, but like what would be way more powerful is novel distribution. And audience discovery, like that's everything. So that's really what we're thinking about. And unfortunately, the Web2 channels are just like 10x, 100x better at that. So that's why we're kind of focused there for now, at least.
It's like they're coming to you and they'll be like, have you ever thought of going door to door and selling, what you have to sell? It's like, I know that will work, but like how many doors?
I think also Natasha and I both worked at Indiegogo. That's where we met. And so we have like some shared trauma around crowdfunding and what that takes. Like in order to do a successful crowdfunding campaign, it's so much work, and all of the work is in prep and like lining up your people who are going to be pre-ordering on day one when you launch your campaign. Like there's this whole science that goes into it, and it's door-to-door sales essentially. And so I think for both of us, we're like, have just like some white blood cells come up when we hear that type of approach where we're like, I don't want to be near that for now, at least.
Not to cause you trauma, but like, can we zoom in on that just for a minute? Because I do think that's interesting that you have that background in kickstarting. And I think it's relevant to DAOs like Nouns that sort of do take that on and do. Well, for example, we just funded Drew Kaufman and Derek Taylor to open a Nounish coffee shop in LA for $650,000, which is kind of a crazy thing for a DAO to do, but very Kickstarter sort of like ethos. Do you think there's anything that DAOs like Nouns can learn from the lessons of that era of Kickstart and Indiegogo and all these types of apps?
Well, I'd say that I would say that you guys have solved for the most of the work of it, which is galvanizing a community support to support any given initiative. I think that when we were in our Indiegogo days, like the biggest mistake that people would make would be, oh, I have this cool idea for a thing, I'm just going to put an Indiegogo page live, and if you build it, they will come. And that is categorically false and not true. The coolest ideas in the world, if you haven't galvanized a movement or community around it, will fail. And so I think for you guys have such a strong community and have such a shared interest in and skin in the game around these things working, that I think that you've done a lot of the hard work already. But man, yeah, the crowdfunding days of yore, I wouldn't go back. I'm not gonna go. I think also, like, what I think we learned from that, which I think Web3 solved for really neatly, is all these people were backing, and a lot of it was hardware projects, but like all these people were backing these early stage tech companies essentially, and not getting any upside from that, like willing to pay $200 for the first beta version of some weird USB cord and having to deal with like a janky product that they'd get in 9 months time after they, if at all. And then they didn't get any upside from that, where it was like, and we saw there was a couple high profile cases where they like went on to raise these huge venture rounds, and the people who supported them early on were like, well, okay, cool. Left with nothing. I think Web3 solved that. So that's one advancement that we've made.
I think that's a good point, is that you mentioned that like with Indiegogo and these types of apps, it was like products in search of people. Yeah. And with DAOs like Nouns, it's like people in search of ideas or products or things, or it's in this very different equation.
It's really similar to what you were talking about with galvanizing the community. I always talk about that with new DAOs that are spinning up, and it's very similar to what we were talking about earlier. You need that minimum viable community, or it's not going to be successful. And there's a lot of people, when Nouns Builder first launched, that thought, I can just launch a DAO just like the way Nouns does, and my first bid is going to be 613 ETH, just like Nouns. It's like, no, it's not going to work that way. Yeah, it's just not. You need to have that immediate. If you already come in with this minimum viable community that also has a aligned mission, like everybody's on board with that North Star, you're going to have like a much higher level chance of success. It's still going to be hard, and there's still a lot of factors, but if you don't have those things, it's almost impossible.
I totally agree.
To have it really pop off.
Yeah, I think one of the most heartbreaking things that I see is really well-intentioned people who have really great ideas about communities that are in service of wonderful things, and them not being present to that fact, where if you don't have people galvanized around it, it's not going to work. And that's like one of the hardest things to see. And yeah, I don't know, when I in my marketing experience and background, like what I'm always looking for is like, find a parade and get in front. Like you need to understand where there's existing movement, because creating the movement on your own as an individual is really, really hard, if not impossible. And so
I think that's one of the superpowers of Nouns, actually. I think that people don't talk enough about Nouns being CC0 and how it is like a community in a box. And so I know 4156, one of the founders of Nouns, has mentioned this a few times. It's like, if you have an idea for a business or for an initiative, you could get funded to bootstrap it for Nouns, but you'll also get like, a media community that's going to make content about it. You're going to have like fans built in. You're going to have, toys built by Klim that he might send to you that you can pass out. And like, I mean, you talked about find a parade and get in front of it. Nouns literally did that. We went to the Rose Parade. We went to the Rose Parade. We made a float. We're like, Deana told us to make a float and get in front of the parade. So we did. But no, I think that's part of the experiment that we're running too. And even as a microcosm here at the Noun Square, it's like all of our content is CC0, which is kind of unique for a media organization. It's like, we hope people will just take it and do things with it.
Yeah.
And hopefully it can be like a built-in sort of scaffold that other people could build cool things on.
I love that.
And I see a little bit of that with Boys Club too, where I feel like you've empowered a lot of your community members to go out in there and do the same kind of proliferation. Totally. Where especially they love your merch, they're wearing your merch, they're sharing it everywhere. They're your best evangelists from what I've seen anyway.
100%,
for sure,
1000%, yeah, definitely.
So we touched on Nouns a little bit here, and I did want to ask you a little bit about, we always like to ask people for outside perspective on what Nouns is doing as a community and as a DAO. I'd love to know, I mean, I know we talked about it face-to-face a few months ago when we were going through a pretty painful DAO split, but I'd love to know that aside, what has your experience been with Nouns and sort of what your thoughts are on this experiment that we're running?
Yeah, I'd say from an outsider perspective, my experience of Nouns is that it's a very sort of fun-loving and joyous community. There's a lot of playfulness, I think, in how the brand shows up. And I don't have experience with it, obviously, very deeply at all, but I'd say whenever we're sort of out, or when Nouns folks come to our events, I'd say there's like a real playfulness, and that's great. I think it's really fun. I think that's a extremely powerful place to sit. I think that if I were to give some criticism or a commentary, I'd say that I think that as a brand playing in that space of sort of fun, playfulness, when I'm thinking about the landscape in the Web3, there's a lot of other competing brands that are also sitting in that space as well. And so being able to carve out what the Nouns differential is from a brand perspective, just like from a brand identity perspective, and the brand identity is extremely strong and very unique and very differentiated. But I think what the brand stands for, having that differentiator be more clear, I think, compared to a ton of other NFT projects. I don't know. That's like a cold read.
That's a really interesting perspective for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the challenges that Nouns has is that being, a true decentralized community actually makes it quite challenging to build a brand identity. And that's one of the things that attracted me to Nouns in the first place, is like, how can you build a brand like in a decentralized way? My background's in branding and marketing as well, like you, Deana, and it's like, I don't know if that's possible. How can you not have a central goal or a central authority, making decisions about, what your voice is going to be? How is it even possible? But Nouns actually does a pretty good job of it, considering, and it's all sort of community grown, which is pretty interesting. People have often said that values within Nouns are like emergent, and that's pretty true. It's like Nouns today is in some ways very similar to when it was founded, but in other ways very different, because it's kind of like this like amorphous, evolving blob. So you're right. I think that's a hard thing for Nouns to figure out, is how do we continue to build a brand, but like the people who are Nouns today won't even be the same people who are Nouns a year from now.
Totally. Yeah. A crazy challenge with no playbook to follow. So you're kind of making it up as you go along, which
we do it
live, as we often say here. Yeah.
But I will say that, like, I think that the artist work and supporting the artist, I think that actually is the seedling for something that is very distinct for Nouns that I don't see in Pudgy Penguins or any of these other things that are also like sort of in an adjacent space that I feel like, at least when I've heard you talk about it, feels really cool and like very different. So I love that as sort of a pillar that you guys are sort of building around.
Well, when 4156 first made his, like, we call like the white paper tweet, it was just a tweet thread when he first sort of introduced Nouns 2 years ago. He called it an infinite art project, and I think that's still, to me, like the core of what Nouns is. And whether we're funding animation, which we've done a lot of, or whether we're funding, novel infrastructure like Nouns Agora that then gets shipped out to be used by Optimism and other DAOs, or whether we're funding somebody like Drew Kaufman's coffee shop, they're all like just different manifestations of art in different sort of tiers, I guess. And so to me, that's what's interesting about it. But
I love that.
I agree. It's a tricky one. So we'll see. It's all an experiment, though. So,
I love what you said
fun,
about,
right?
The fun. And I always talk about that. Like, Nouns brings the fun anytime we go to live events. But I think of Boys Club exactly the same. Like, Boys Club brings the fun. Like, I think that's the attraction. And that's the thing I hear over and over again. Oh, it's just so fun. And oh, I connected with this person, and then we went off and started a business and all these like crazy things. But it's, at the core of it is, it's like you want to be there because there's fun. There's fun people, there's fun vibes, there's, fun events, things like that. And I think without it, it's like, if you're going to spend this much time, money, and energy in a space, it better be fun. Why else am I even going to be there?
Totally.
So I think that has to be somewhere at the core there.
Totally.
Absolutely.
I'm with you.
You talked about Nouns being in a unique spot of being like in that fun-loving sort of sector of Web3. And I think Boys Club sits there too in a certain way, but maybe instead of calling it fun, I'd call it like the absurd sort of area. It's like not taking ourselves too seriously. Like your name is a great example. It's like Boys Club, you know exactly what you're doing. And Nouns is the same way. It's like, oh, you want to be an ape, or do you want to be like a can of Spam? Is that what you want to identify yourself as online? There's sort of a power in that absurdity and not taking yourself too seriously.
Totally.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you about the SBF trial, and I don't think we have time
yes,
to get into that.
I want to ask that. Please.
All right. Well, in 2 minutes or less, what was it like following the SBF trial live? You guys did a great job of that.
Well, first of all, I'm based in Nashville, so I wasn't there live. Natasha, my co-founder and partner, was there in the courtroom, and so she went many days, and what we call LARPed as a courtroom reporter.
I loved it.
So great job.
So we didn't know, like we didn't know that you could go in the court. Like there's like a whole, like you can go in and just watch it. And so anyway, she went in and we learned so much about the judicial system and how it all sort of hangs together in covering the trial. But basically, yeah, I mean, a part of it was, so for those who don't know, Boys Club podcast covered the trial. We did like basically 10-minute daily episodes whenever Natasha was able to make it in, which was almost daily. And I think for us, it felt important to do, like there was a big debate between us where we were like, man, we don't want to give this guy more airtime. Everyone is talking about it. What's our unique take on this case? And like, he sucks. It sucks for the industry. And like, maybe we should just move on and not cover it. But on the other hand, it feels really like I've heard this saying that really resonates with me, which is that daylight is the best astringent. It's actually that's probably wrong. Daylight is the best
disinfectant usually.
Disinfectant.
Yeah, disinfectant. Yeah.
What was that?
Daylight is the best disinfectant.
Boys Club.
So it felt though he sucks and it sucks to give him more, to platform him and to give more airtime. It felt important to acknowledge what had happened and to look at it in broad daylight and expose the people and their bad behavior so that we can collectively as an industry see that, decide that we will not accept it and move on and like be able to say, this is behavior that we absolutely will not accept and then we can kind of turn the page on it. And for us as people who kind of sit in this interesting intersection of like, a lot of our audience doesn't care about crypto that much. They kind of are curious a little bit, but I don't know. And then when we do have like diehard crypto people in our community as well. And I don't know, it felt important to talk about it openly and learn from this moment. If we're not learning from this moment, then it's like kind of, I don't know, it'd be a missed opportunity. So that's what
like how they say those who
do
do not learn. It's like people, when they say people who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. I don't know if that was Winston Churchill or someone said that anyway.
I really loved I loved it. I loved those episodes so much. I was listening. I was waiting for them. They were hilarious. It was just, we did need that take. So just to be clear, should something like this happen again? Yes, we want your takes on this.
Amazing. I appreciate that.
Natasha.
Yes, we do.
I remember that.
It was just so funny. And I'm an attorney, so I have a very, like a different perspective on this. But
you must have.
But I was
cringed.
loving I loved it. No, I loved it because I loved like as you were learning, like there was so much like between the two of you talking about like her telling you, oh, and then this happened, and this is what happens in the system, and then there's, and it was just really fun, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yours and Carly Riley were the two that I was listening to every day.
We love Carly
getting your
so
takes,
much,
and I loved it.
She did a great job.
Absolutely loved it.
Thank you for that. I will say, where we sort of found our unique take was in sort of finding some humor and color in all of it, and also learning about like what was happening. Like we literally had no idea how a court process took place. So like, she would kind of come back and tell me about it and be like, okay, well, what does that mean? Or like, what do you mean the judge has to like go away and talk about this thing? So anyway, we had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you didn't cringe as a lawyer, at our lack of knowledge.
Not at all.
How our country works.
You got the legal thumbs up from Prof. Witter.
You got it. Well, the other thing is I teach it. So I teach law, teach legal strategies for startups for entrepreneurship students.
Cool.
And that is the best way that you learn anything is by, if you have to explain it, if you have to learn it, if you have to teach it to somebody else, that's how you're going to solidify the learning. So it's perfect. Yeah. It's awesome that she was, just doing that whole process. It was fantastic. I loved it.
Before you take off on us, Deana, because I know you got to get going. You've been building Boys Club with Natasha for 2 years now. You've fostered an amazing community in the middle of the bear market, which I think is amazing. We talked earlier about how you were able to go full time on this in the middle of the bear as well, which I think is a testament to what you guys are building. We just love to know what are you guys most looking forward to in 2024? This is actually going to air right at the end of the year in about 2 weeks' time. It'll be our last episode of ZEROPOD for the year. So perfect opportunity to ask you what to expect in 2024.
Well, what we've announced publicly, we have a lot coming up in 2024 that is going to be very exciting that we haven't yet talked about yet. So I'm not able to talk about everything, but I am able to talk about what we're doing at South by Southwest, which is a summit in Austin that is on the consumer, the application level of crypto and Web3. So Natasha and I and a lot of people in the Boys Club core team have been to basically every crypto conference over the last 2 years. We've been to all of them, and it's been amazing and incredible and great. And part of what's so great about crypto conferences or Web3 conferences is that they're for builders and they're by builders. And the result of that is that there's a lot of conversation about infrastructure and how things are being built and sort of the plumbing of all of it. And sort of you're deep in the stack of how it's all working and what people are building. There's not a lot of conversation that's about the application level of Web3. And I think it's healthy and appropriate and great for these conferences to be catering to a certain type of conversation. And there also needs to be another type of space that's catering to the sort of consumer layer of Web3. And so that's what we're going to be doing at South by Southwest in March 12th. We're doing a one-day summit, and basically part of why we decided to do it at South by Southwest was it's 10 times harder to go in a space that isn't crypto native and that isn't Web3 native to have this conversation. But we felt like we needed to meet people where they were at. And so our hope is that we're bringing in the best builders and minds and thinkers that are building in Web3 and kind of doing a showcase and sort of vision casting to an audience and room full of Web2 brands, trad brands, agency people, like people who are working in the consumer internet generally, to have them see what's possible. Like crypto has gotten a really bad rap over the past year and a half. SBF, all the headlines have sucked. And I think what we've been present to is like, yes, that's happening. And there's a really creative group of people who are doing very excellent work, and that's not being seen at all. And so we're going to be bringing that to South by Southwest and showcasing that incredible work, and hopefully like changing some minds about what crypto and Web3 is with people who aren't in our space. So that's like really what we're focused on for the next quarter. And if you listeners are planning to be in Austin for South by Southwest, like definitely have us on your list of stops, because I think it's going to be a really powerful moment to show a different side of Web3.
I think that's going to be an amazing
Where can people...
approach. Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Where can people learn more about Boys Club if someone's listening and for some reason they haven't heard your wonderful podcast and the amazing events that you guys put on? Where should they go?
boyclub.vip is our website, and it's kind of the hub for everything. You'll find the podcast, the newsletters, and all of our events and everything there. So that's a great place to start.
Awesome. Everyone's a VIP.
Everyone's a VIP. Everyone's a VIP in
Awesome.
Boys Club.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much, Deana. This has been an awesome conversation. I feel like we probably could have gone for a few hours, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I appreciate your perspectives and everything that you're building. And we look forward to talking to you next time that you come
appreciate
and,
you guys
and chat with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We'll see you on Chain.
Bye.